Have you ever found yourself obsessing over someone you just met, convinced it is love at first sight, only to have the spark vanish the moment things settled down? Or maybe you impulsively bought something expensive because everyone on your feed was talking about it, only to feel a wave of buyer's remorse the next morning. We often think we are the masters of our own destiny, rational beings making logical choices. But the truth is, most of us are walking across a swaying, terrifying suspension bridge, and we do not even realize it. We are mistaking the adrenaline of the fall for the butterflies of passion. This phenomenon is not just a metaphor. It is a documented psychological quirk known as the suspension bridge effect, or in scientific terms, the misattribution of arousal. To understand how it hijacks your life, we have to go back to 1974 to a rugged canyon in British Columbia. Social psychologists Donald Dutton and Arthur Aaron conducted an experiment that changed how we understand human emotion. They set up shop at the Capilano Suspension Bridge. Now, if you have never seen this bridge, picture a narrow, rickety pathway made of hemp rope and cedar planks, stretching 450 feet across a river. It hangs 230 feet in the air. When you step onto it, it sways. The wind howls. The river rushes far below. It is, by design, terrifying. The researchers positioned an attractive young woman in the middle of this bridge. Her job was to stop men between the ages of 18 and 35 as they crossed. She would ask them to complete a simple survey for a psychology class. When they finished, she would tear off a piece of paper, write down her phone number, and say, "Give me a call if you want to know the results." They then repeated the exact same experiment on a sturdy, safe, boring wooden bridge just upstream. This second bridge was only 10 feet above a quiet stream. It did not sway. It did not induce fear. The same woman, the same script, the same phone number. The results were staggering. The men who met the woman on the terrifying suspension bridge were twice as likely to call her back compared to the men on the safe bridge. Why? Because the men on the high bridge were experiencing a physiological spike. Their hearts were pounding, their palms were sweating, and their breathing was shallow. Their brains, desperate to make sense of this physical arousal, looked at the attractive woman and decided, "I must be incredibly attracted to her." They confused fear with love. On the safe bridge, the men's heart rates were normal. They saw the woman, thought she was nice, but felt no intense pull. They saw reality. The men on the suspension bridge saw a hallucination created by their own biology. This study is usually taught in the context of dating. It is the reason why a horror movie or a roller coaster date is a classic move. You are hacking the other person's dopamine receptors. But today, I want to take this concept out of the dating world and apply it to your actual life. Because the suspension bridge effect does not just mess with your heart, it messes with your career, your finances, and your sense of self. In the modern world, we are constantly on a suspension bridge. The bridge is the pressure of social media. It is the anxiety of a volatile economy. It is the hustle culture that screams you are falling behind if you are not a millionaire by 25. When you exist in a state of high anxiety and overstimulation, your brain cannot tell the difference between what is true and what is just noise. Think about the visual illusion of the character that looks like a bee or the number 13 depending on what is around it. If you put it next to an A and a C, your brain screams B. If you put it between 12 and 14, your brain screams 13. Context is everything. When you are surrounded by people panicking, you panic. When you see everyone buying a specific cryptocurrency or rushing to move to a specific city, your heart rate goes up. You feel a pull. You tell yourself, I want this. This is my dream. But is it? Or is it just the swaying of the bridge? You might be chasing a promotion not because you love the work, but because the corporate environment is high pressure and competitive, mimicking that physiological arousal. You might be staying in a toxic friendship because the drama feels like passion. We are terrified of the silence of the sturdy bridge, so we cling to the chaos of the suspension bridge, thinking that intensity equals importance. The Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman discussed this in his book, Thinking, Fast and Slow. He explained that the human brain is inherently lazy. It loves shortcuts. When faced with complex emotions, it grabs the nearest explanation. If your heart is racing, the brain assumes you are excited, not realizing you might just be overwhelmed. If you are overly concerned with the external voice of the world, you lose your internal compass. You become a leaf blowing in the wind. You see a pair of limited edition sneakers that everyone is fighting over, and suddenly you need them. You see a grocery store shelf emptying out, and you fill your cart with canned beans you will never eat. You decide to start a podcast, but the moment a friend questions you, you crumble. Why? Because the desire did not come from your core. It came from the bridge. In this state of constant uncertainty, oscillating between fear and FOMO, it is impossible to create a life that actually fits you. You are just reacting to the sway. To get what you actually want, to find that deep sense of peace and purpose, you have to learn how to get off the bridge. You have to learn how to distinguish between the adrenaline of the crowd and the quiet truth of your own intuition. So, how do we actually step off this swaying bridge and find solid ground? It starts by recognizing the difference between the noise of the world and the signal of your own soul. We have to look at the stories we are told about success and realize that many of them are just another form of that adrenaline-induced illusion. Consider the story of Jeff Bezos in the early 1990s. Before he was the bald billionaire we know today, he was a senior vice president at a prestigious hedge fund on Wall Street. He had the golden handcuffs. In the eyes of society, he had made it. He had the salary, the status, and the stability. To leave that job was, by all conventional metrics, insane. It was the equivalent of jumping off a perfectly good cruise ship into a dinghy. When he told his boss he wanted to quit to sell books on this new thing called the internet, his boss took him for a long walk in Central Park. The boss listened and said, "That sounds like a really great idea, but it would be an even better idea for someone who did not already have a good job." That is the suspension bridge effect in action. The good job is the swaying bridge. The prestige, the monthly paycheck, the approval of your peers, that is the adrenaline. It feels like safety, but it is often just golden shackles. Bezos had to ignore the external vertigo and listen to his internal logic, which he famously called the regret minimization framework. He projected himself to age 80 and asked, "Would I regret leaving Wall Street? No. Would I regret not trying this internet thing? Yes." He chose the internal voice over the external roar. This brings us to a concept from another titan of business, Warren Buffett. Buffett has a mental model that is the perfect antidote to the suspension bridge effect. He calls it the inner scorecard versus the outer scorecard. He poses a simple question. Would you rather be the world's greatest lover, but have everyone think you are the world's worst lover? Or would you rather be the world's worst lover, but have everyone think you are the world's greatest? If you choose the latter, you are living by an outer scorecard. You are letting the applause of the crowd dictate your reality. You are letting the bridge sway you. In an age of Instagram likes, LinkedIn updates, and performative success, we are constantly pushed toward the outer scorecard. We buy houses we cannot afford to impress neighbors we do not like. We take jobs that sound impressive at a cocktail party but make us miserable on Monday mornings. To get off the bridge, you must cultivate an inner scorecard. You have to reach a point where your own judgment of your life matters more than the judgment of the gallery. But this is easier said than done, especially when we fall into the trap of comparison. The English philosopher Francis Bacon once said that we are accustomed to defining our value through comparison, and what follows is always envy and disappointment. We live in a timeline-obsessed culture. We are told we need to graduate by 22, be a manager by 25, and be on the Forbes 30 under 30 list, or we have failed. This manufactured urgency is just another swaying bridge designed to make you panic. If you follow the narrative of the American film industry, you might know the story of Harrison Ford. Today, he is a legend, the face of Indiana Jones and Han Solo. But do you know what he was doing while his peers were getting their big breaks? He was a carpenter. While other actors were scrambling for any role, desperate for validation, Harrison Ford was building decks and cabinets. He was 35 years old, an age where Hollywood usually tells you to pack it up and go home, when he finally landed the role of Han Solo. He watched his friends succeed years before he did. If he had succumbed to the suspension bridge effect, if he had let the panic of falling behind consume him, he might have quit. He might have taken a sales job he hated just to feel safe. Instead, he focused on his craft and his own timeline. He drove his own car, in his own lane, at his own speed. Our destiny must be guided by our own passion and awareness, not by the panic of the herd. Living your life in a whirlwind of comparison is the fastest way to lose yourself. As the old Chinese proverb says, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Right now, you need to stop comparing your behind-the-scenes footage with everyone else's highlight reel. You need to stop letting your brain be hijacked by visible, flashy goals that do not actually align with who you are. We talk a lot about staying awake or staying woke. But true wakefulness is the ability to pause and ask, do I actually want this? Or am I just copying the desire of the person next to me? We are often surprised to find that the most effective way to keep a clear head is to simply follow your curiosity. Not your passion, which is a heavy, loaded word, but your curiosity. If you are completely devoted to something you love, whether it is coding, gardening, or writing weird fan fiction, you are immune to the bridge. When you are in a state of flow, the bridge stops swaying. You are grounded in the reality of the work itself. But be careful. Do not confuse a genuine love for the craft with a love for the rewards. If you want to be a writer because you want to be famous, you are on the bridge. If you want to be a writer because you cannot stop writing sentences in your head, you are on solid ground. The former makes you a slave to external validation. The latter makes you a master of your own fate. The brain is tricky. It struggles to distinguish between a craving and a calling. A craving is loud, urgent, and often tied to ego. A calling is quiet, persistent, and tied to the soul. To hear the latter, you have to turn down the volume on the former. So, you have identified the lies. You have decided to stop comparing yourself to the curated lives of strangers on the internet, but you are still standing at the edge of the cliff, paralyzed by the sheer size of your dreams. You want to change your life, but the goal feels so massive, so daunting, that you do not take a single step. This brings us to the next crucial tool in our kit, the art of thinking small. We often fail to get what we want, not because we lack desire, but because we are paralyzed by the sheer scale of the mountain. We look at the summit and freeze. We think that to change our lives, we need a massive overhaul. We need to wake up at 4 in the morning, drink a green smoothie, run 10 miles, and meditate for an hour. But that is just another form of the suspension bridge, a high-stakes, terrifying expectation that sets you up for a crash. The antidote to this paralysis is to lower the bar drastically. Consider the story of Stephen Geese, the author of Mini Habits. For years, Stephen wanted to get in shape. He would motivate himself to do a 30-minute workout, do it once, and then quit for months. The goal was too big. The mental resistance was too high. One day, exhausted and lazy, he decided he would do just one single push-up. That was it. Just one? It sounds ridiculous, right? But he got down on the floor and did one push-up. Since he was already down there, he did a few more. This trivial, almost laughable goal broke the inertia. It bypassed the brain's fear center. He did one push-up every day for months. That tiny habit eventually compounded into a full gym routine, a transformed physique, and a best-selling book. This is the power of starting small. When you are terrified of the swaying bridge, do not try to sprint across it. Just look at your feet and take 1 inch of a step. Do not write a novel. Write 1 sentence. Do not clean the whole house. Just wash 1 fork. By making the hurdle so low that you cannot fail, you trick your brain into moving forward. You replace the adrenaline of fear with the dopamine of completion. Now, this brings us to a paradox. We have spent this entire time talking about how to get off the terrifying suspension bridge of social pressure. But here is the twist. Once you are grounded, once you are stable, you might actually need to build a suspension bridge of your own. There is a difference between the anxiety forced upon you by the world and the eustress or positive stress that you choose for yourself. The world's bridge makes you panic. Your bridge makes you grow. In the startup world and high-performance cultures, this is often called a forcing function. It is the act of deliberately putting yourself in a challenging situation to force your own evolution. Think about the space race in the 1960s. When President Kennedy announced that the United States would go to the moon by the end of the decade, the technology did not exist. The metals did not exist. The math was barely there. He created a massive, terrifying gap between reality and expectation. He built a suspension bridge and forced the entire nation to walk across it. That pressure did not cause panic. It caused innovation. You can apply this to your own life. Sometimes you are too comfortable. You are stuck in a zone of competency, doing things you already know how to do. To grow, you need to throw your hat over the wall. Sign up for the marathon before you have run a mile. Commit to the freelance project before you feel fully ready. Book the plane ticket before you have the itinerary planned. When you create your own bridge, you are in control of the sway. You are using the adrenaline to sharpen your focus, not to cloud your judgment. You are acknowledging that comfort is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. The goal is not to eliminate fear from your life, but to choose which fears are worth facing. Do you want the fear of missing out on a trend, or the fear of failing at a dream that is actually yours? So, how do we sustain this? How do we keep our balance between the necessary calm of the inner scorecard and the necessary chaos of growth? The answer lies in your input. In the digital age, your diet is not just what you eat, it is what you read, what you watch, and who you listen to. If your mind is filled with 15-second dance videos and outraged tweets, your reality will be fragmented and anxious. You will always be reacting to the bridge. To maintain your footing, you must go deep, Read books that have stood the test of time, not just the headlines of today. Cultivate a circle of friends who talk about ideas and growth, not just people and drama. When your knowledge is deep and your experience is broad, you develop a center of gravity that makes you harder to push around. You begin to see the world not as a series of threats, but as a series of choices. Ultimately, the suspension bridge effect is a lesson in awareness. It teaches us that our emotions are not always facts. Just because you feel a pull does not mean you have to follow it. Just because everyone is running in one direction does not mean there is a fire. They might just be chasing a phantom. You have the power to step off the bridge. You have the power to stand on solid ground, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, is this what I want, or is this just what I am feeling right now? Once you can answer that question, you are free. You are no longer a passenger on a ride you did not choose. You are the architect of your own path. Thank you for spending this time with me. It is easy to get lost in the noise, so I appreciate you stopping by for this conversation. If this sparked something in you, maybe a realization about a bridge you have been stuck on, let me know in the comments. I read them, and I would love to hear your story. If you found value here, consider sharing this with a friend who might need to hear it, and hit that subscribe button to join us for more deep dives into how we can build a better version of ourselves. Until next time, stay grounded and watch your step.